I'm not one for ranking videos, they're mainly opinionated and do have a bad press about them if not conducted correctly. So with that being said, I'm about to take all those boxes as I'm about to do a top 10 video series. These will be the top F1 drivers for each year. And I did think about putting either the 70s or 80s on this list, as those are decades I know more than the 50s and 60s for example, but I do feel like it could be a stretch with my limited knowledge. So if you do enjoy this video and this series, then I will consider doing more of these. So with that being said, I'm Squire95, and here is in my opinion the top 10 F1 drivers in 1990. Number 10, Alessandro Nannini. The story of Nannini is quite a sad one, having only won his only Grand Prix in Japan back in 1989 after Ayrton Senna got disqualified for being helped back onto the track for, tangling with Alain Prost in a title deciding move. You have to feel things were on the up for the Italian, but sadly for the Benetton driver in October of 1990, he was involved in a helicopter accident which severed his right forearm, literally cutting short his F1 career after just 4 years. What could have been? Number 9, Aguri Suzuki. Formula 1 in the late 80s and early 90s had a major popularity boom in Japan, with drivers such as Satoru Nakajima and Ukyo Katayama popping up in the pinnacle of motorsport. But it was Aguri Suzuki who pushed the boundaries for Japanese F1 drivers, and in 1990 became the first F1 driver from Japan to claim a podium spot at his home race. Suzuki continued in F1 on and off until 1995 as a driver, before returning as a team owner of Super Aguri between 2006 and 2008, which is probably left unsaid. Number 8, Riccardo Patrese. The original Minister of Defence before Sergio Perez made it popular with the youth of today. The Italian was already having a fruitful career by the time 1990 rolled around, with 3 wins under his belt, which included one of them at the San Marino Grand Prix halfway through his Williams tenure. However, compared to the previous season, 1990 wasn't a good year for the Italian, with only 1 podium and a smattering of points finishes, ultimately finishing 7th in the table. But better years were ahead for Riccardo. Number 7, Thierry Boutsen. The most notable Belgian driver in F1 is Jackie Ickx. Thierry Boutsen garnered 3 wins throughout his career as the Belgian left Williams at the end of the season to join up with Ligier. The 1990 season for Thierry was one of his best, with a points finish for every single time he finished a race in 1990 and 3 podiums to boot in that very season. It was his last great season before a dry spell in 1991. He wouldn't score another point in F1 until the very last race of the 1992 season. That is difficult to swallow for Belgium's second best racing driver. Number 6, John Alesi. His battle with Ayrton Senna at Phoenix is more than enough to give the man from Avignon his well-deserved position in the top 10. The Frenchman made his debut in F1 at his home Grand Prix the previous year for Tyrrell, and despite a clutch of retirements in 1990, one of them being at his home race at Paul Ricard, he managed to do a decent full season, so much so that Ferrari went for Alesi, where he spent the next 5 years. A great talent in every sense of the word. Number 5, Gerhard Berger. The Austrian veteran is 7 years into F1 at this point, and after 3 years driving that for Ferrari, he was essentially involved in a swap deal between both Ferrari and McLaren, as Berger went to partner Ayrton Senna whilst Prost took his place at Ferrari to partner Nigel Mansell. This turned out to be a decent move, as the Austrian helped McLaren retain the next 2 Constructors' Championships and helped Ayrton Senna both reclaim and retain his world title in the process. He is Mr. Reliable. Number 4, Nigel Mansell. Il Leone, as the Tifosi named him, did not have a fruitful 1990 season. Mansell's last season with the Prancing Horse saw the Brits notch up 5 podiums in the season, which included a 3rd place finish, 3 second place finishes, and a win. One notable highlight was his outside overtake on Gerhard Berger on the penultimate lap of that year's Mexican Grand Prix. But reliability issues, amongst other things, which included the mechanics favouring Prost over Mansell as well, prompted the Brits to leave the Scuderia at the end of the season and return to Williams for 1991. Possibly the best move he could ever make. Number 3, Nelson Piquet. The Brazilian was beginning his twilight years at this point, but the 3-time world champion was still pushing himself and dragged Benetton to 3rd place in both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. Despite his controversies in recent years, Piquet in his prime was a fantastic racer, but 1990 was the last one in which he was ever at the top of his game. He would never return to the top again. Number 2, Alain Prost. The defending champion had his hands full going into 1990. With the rivalry between himself and Senna in full swing, Prost moved to Ferrari to start afresh, but looking back, it wasn't the best move of his career. Having made a mixed start to his title defence with 2 retirements in the first half of the season and a drop in form from Hungary onwards, Prost needed straight podium finishes to have a chance at the title. But his challenge came to an abrupt end in Japan when both himself and Senna came to blows at the very first corner, meaning that Prost missed out on the title and lost his way the next year. And number 1, Ayrton Senna. I mean, come on, he was always going to be on the top of the rankings. Senna wanted revenge on Prost for 1989, and dear God did he get it. In all the races that the Brazilian finished in, he was always on a podium, save for only one race in Mexico, where he finished 20th due to a puncture late on in the race. But Senna wanted to reclaim his title, and did so by intentionally taking out his bitter rival Prost, and showed no remorse for his actions, defending himself with now his infamous speech, "If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver." He etched himself into the history books by essentially saying, if you're gunning for the World Championship on the same tarmac as me, you better make your actions count. And that is the legend that is Ayrton Senna. And that's my list. Let me know if you want more below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this very video. I am Squire95, and I'll see you soon. Ta-ra!